Anne was 22. He was 30, a Middle Eastern prince and heir to a kingdom. What began as a simple repair on a ceremonial garment ended up turning his world upside down. And when she discovered who he really was and chose to avoid him completely, everything fell apart. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe because this story has it all: forbidden passion, royal secrets, and a love that dared to defy ancient protocol. Grandmother Rose's atelier in Brooklyn smelled of fresh fabric and strong coffee every morning when Anne Richardson arrived to work. At 22, she was already a graduate in international business, with chestnut honey hair that danced across her shoulders when she moved, and sharp green eyes that shone with intelligence. Beautiful in a natural, effortless way, yet it was her posture that drew the eye. Anne walked like a woman who would never bow to anyone, never apologize for taking up space, never lower her gaze when men tried to intimidate her. The call came on a Friday in September that would change everything. A refined female voice, British accent, asking if they could urgently repair a traditional Arab ceremonial garment. Hotel in Times Square. Generous payment. That very night, Anne glanced at the pile of bills stacked on her grandmother's desk and said yes without hesitation. Money was money, and they needed it. 2 hours later, Anne stepped out of the elevator at the Plaza Hotel, carrying a vintage leather case, dressed in tailored black pants and a navy blouse that made her eyes glow even brighter. Nothing extravagant, only the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was. When the doors opened on the top floor, an elegant woman greeted her. "Miss Richardson? I'm Margaret, His Highness's assistant." His Highness. Anne raised a brow but showed no surprise. She simply extended her hand firmly. "Anne, pleasure." Margaret led her through a lavish antechamber into the main salon that looked like a scene out of an Arabian film. Authentic Persian rugs, furniture breathing with history, a sweeping view of Central Park, and at the center of the room, a man who made the air itself feel heavier. Hassan al Rashid stood by the window, finishing a call in Arabic. Tall, broad-shouldered, filling out a dark suit with impossible precision, wavy black hair, a trimmed beard framing a jaw that looked sculpted from stone. When he turned and his amber eyes locked onto hers, Anne felt a strange pull in her stomach. Yes, he was devastatingly handsome, but there was more, a presence that commanded attention without asking. "Miss Richardson," he said, crossing the room with steps that claimed every inch of ground. His voice was low, each word wrapped in an accent that made it sound like music. "Thank you for coming at such short notice." Anne extended her hand. When he clasped it, the contact lasted a heartbeat longer than necessary. A spark shot up her arm. "Anne, where can I see the piece?" Hassan led her to the traditional kameez hanging from a golden rack. She immediately recognized the craftsmanship. Midnight blue silk with golden embroidery telling ancestral stories. It wasn't just clothing, it was art. The tear on the side was small but significant. "Delicate work," she murmured, fingers gliding across the silk. "It will take a few hours." "Take as long as you need," Hassan replied, watching her examine the fabric with a professional gaze. "It's a family heirloom. My grandfather wore it during state ceremonies." Anne nodded, already calculating the technique. "I'll need you to wear it. The fabric behaves differently on the body. The fit must be exact." Hassan hesitated for a fraction of a second, then gestured to Margaret. "You may leave us." When they were alone, he began removing his jacket. Anne arranged her tools, pretending not to notice how every move seemed designed to impress. When Hassan removed his shirt, revealing a torso honed by years of discipline, Anne had to force herself not to lose focus. He slipped into the kameez with fluid motion, standing tall as she adjusted the garment. Up close, her heart quickened. He smelled of sandalwood, and something far more dangerous. As she bent down to examine the tear, Hassan muttered something in Arabic to his aide. The tone, the words made her blood boil. So young, so beautiful. Does she even know what she's doing? Anne's face remained calm, but her eyes burned. Without a word, she drove the needle into his arm just hard enough to sting. Hassan let out a startled sound, more shock than pain, and instantly, 3 guards burst into the room. Anne rose slowly, needle still in hand. In flawless Arabic, she said, "I know exactly what I'm doing, Your Highness." Next time, think twice before underestimating someone. The silence that followed was deafening. Hassan dismissed the guards with a flick of his hand, never breaking eye contact. There was shock there, yes, but also something dangerously close to admiration. "You speak Arabic," he said at last. "Fluently," Anne replied, switching back to English. "And I know when someone is being disrespectful." Hassan touched the spot where she had pricked him, a slow smile curving across his lips. "You hurt me on purpose." "An accident," Anne lied, though both of them knew it wasn't. Hassan laughed, a low, genuine laugh that transformed his entire face. "Interesting definition of accident. Do you have a problem with competent women?" Anne asked, putting away her needle with calm precision. "Or just with Americans?" He studied her face for a long moment. "Actually, I have a problem with people who pretend to be less than they are. You clearly are not one of them." Anne smiled for the first time since she had arrived, a smile that lit up her entire face and stole his breath. "Well then, now that we've established I'm neither decorative nor incompetent, can we get back to work? This garment won't fix itself." For the next 2 hours, Hassan watched her in fascination. The precision of her movements, the way she spoke to the fabric as if it were alive. He tried to draw her into conversation, but Anne kept her answers brief, professional. When she finished, Hassan paid her 5 times the fee. "For exceptional work," he said, "and for the lesson in humility." Anne accepted the money without protest. She needed it too badly. "Thank you." She turned for the door, but Hassan stopped her. "Anne," she turned back, "I'd like to have dinner with you tomorrow, to get to know you better." Anne studied him carefully. There was genuine interest in his eyes, but also danger. "Thank you for the invitation, but I don't mix work with personal life." It was polite but firm. Hassan blinked, clearly not used to rejection. "May I ask why?" "Because I've learned powerful men usually want things that aren't for sale." "And I'm not for sale, Your Highness." She walked away, leaving him standing in the middle of the room, captivated by the first woman who had ever dared to say no. Hassan stood there for several minutes, smiling like a fool. Anne Richardson had just done something no one had in years. She treated him like a man, and then turned him down, and he was hopelessly addicted to the feeling. From the other room Malik had been watching, he recognized the look in Hassan's eyes immediately. It wasn't the look of a man rejected. It was the look of a predator who had just found prey worth chasing, and Hassan al Rashid never gave up on something he truly wanted. 3 days passed since Anne had walked out of Hassan's life with a polite but final no. 3 days in which he failed to focus in meetings, woke up thinking of her green eyes, and found himself smiling like an idiot every time he remembered that sting of her needle. Malik watched with growing concern as Hassan flipped through Anne's business card for the 5th time, as if it might reveal more than just her name and number. "Your Highness," Malik said on Monday morning, "you have a trade meeting in an hour." Hassan barely looked up. "Malik, do you think wardrobe accidents can happen twice in the same week?" Malik's stomach sank. "Please tell me you're not thinking what I think you are." Hassan smiled, that dangerous smile that always preceded his worst decisions. 2 hours later, Hassan stood in front of his wardrobe examining a dark gray caftan, testing the seam at the shoulder. "Ancient fabrics are fragile," he murmured, pressing until the thread snapped. Malik entered just in time to see the damage. "What a pity," Hassan said innocently. "Looks like it needs urgent repair." "Hassan," Malik said, using his name with the familiarity of 15 years at his side, "this is a terrible idea." Hassan slipped the damaged caftan into a bag. "On the contrary, it's brilliant. Anne Richardson clearly needs more work, and I have garments in need of special care. It benefits everyone. And if she realizes it was intentional, then she's even smarter than I thought." The call came from Margaret, as elegant as ever. "Miss Richardson, we have another emergency. A more delicate piece this time." Anne, drowning in a pile of student loan bills, didn't hesitate. "What kind of repair?" "A vintage caftan, damage at the shoulder." "His Highness specifically requested your services." Anne frowned. 2 wardrobe accidents in 3 days seemed suspicious, but work was work. This time, when she arrived at the plaza, Hassan was waiting for her in the lobby. Impeccable dark suit, posture radiating authority, but his eyes carried something else, expectation. It made Anne's stomach twist. "Anne," he said, as though the name itself were precious. Thank you for coming again. Professionalism, she replied coolly. Where's the garment? Inside the suite, Anne studied the caftan and knew instantly. The tear was too clean, too precise, more like a deliberate cut than an accident. She looked at Hassan, who watched her reaction with barely hidden amusement. And how exactly did this happen? Innocent accident while dressing. Old garments are fragile, he said, face unreadable. Anne traced the edge of the tear. Suspicion confirmed. What an interesting coincidence, Your Highness. The way she said coincidence left no doubt she believed nothing of the sort. Hassan smiled, deciding on honesty. Perhaps it wasn't entirely accidental. Perhaps, she challenged. Very well. It was deliberate. I needed to see you again. The blunt confession caught Anne off guard. So you destroyed historical fabric just to summon me? Technically lightly damaged, he corrected. And yes, I would do it again. Anne shook her head, torn between irritation and dangerous amusement. Why? Hassan stepped closer. Because you intrigue me. Because no one has ever made me question everything I thought I knew about persuasion. Because you told me no. And I can't stop wondering what it would feel like if you said yes. Anne kept her face neutral, though he noticed the faint tremor in her fingers as she arranged her tools. I'll need you to remove your shirt to examine the damage, she said, overly professional. Hassan nodded, unbuttoning slowly this time. Aware that she was watching, each button, each inch of skin, calculated for maximum effect. When the shirt dropped to the floor, Anne had to steady her breath. He carried the physique of a man disciplined in training, strong, defined, but not exaggerated, golden skin kissed by Mediterranean sun, a faint scar near his heart. Polo, he explained, catching her glance. Accident at 18. Hassan slipped on the caftan deliberately, turning so she could assess the shoulder. He stood too close. Anne could feel the heat of his body, the subtle fragrance that clung to her senses. The tear is here, she said, fingertips brushing the fabric near his shoulder. Her touch grazed his skin through the opening, sending a charge through both of them. Anne, Hassan murmured. May I ask you something? She nodded, unable to trust her voice. Why did you really say no to dinner? Anne paused. Because men like you don't make innocent invitations. You make offers. What kind of offers? He pressed. The kind that always come with a price I refuse to pay. And if I told you there was no price, that I only want to know the woman bold enough to stab me with a needle? Anne gave a humorless smile. Then I'd say you don't understand how the world works, Your Highness. There is always a price. Hassan lightly grasped her wrist, stopping her work. My name is Hassan, and I would very much like you to use it. Anne looked at his hand over hers, then at his face. There was sincerity there, enough to disarm her. Hassan, she said softly, testing the name on her lips. Are you satisfied? Starting to be, he admitted. Now may I try again to persuade you to have dinner with me? Anne returned to her work, but Hassan caught the faint smile she tried to hide. You may try. I know a small private place. No protocols, no titles, he said. I could have you picked up at 8. No, Anne said firmly. Hassan's heart dipped, until she continued. Not because I don't want to, but because if we have dinner, it will be on my terms. A place I choose, a time I decide, and you will come as Hassan, not His Highness. Hassan's slow smile was dangerous to any woman's heart. I accept your terms. I haven't said yes yet, Anne reminded him, though her voice now carried playfulness. Are you saying yes? Maybe. Maybe is no. It's also not yes. For the next hour, Hassan watched her work in quiet fascination, the unspoken dance unfolding between them. She was interested, he knew, in the way she avoided his eyes, the subtle hitch in her breath when he leaned too close, the hidden smile she tried not to show. When she finished, Anne packed her tools neatly. $500, she said. Hassan paid without hesitation, adding a generous bonus. For the inconvenience of repairing a suspicious accident. Anne accepted, this time without protest. Hassan, she said at the door, if you destroy another garment on purpose, I'll charge 1,000. Fair, he agreed. And dinner? Anne paused, hand on the doorknob. There's a small Thai place in the village. Nothing fancy, nothing royal. If you manage to find me there tomorrow at 7, maybe I'll be there. How will I know which one? He asked. Anne smiled, finally meeting his gaze. "If you're as determined as you seem, you'll figure it out." And with that, she was gone, leaving Hassan with a challenge to chase and his first real victory in the battle for Anne Richardson. From the other room, Malik watched Hassan pick up the phone to begin researching Thai restaurants in the village, and knew he had lost all control, because Hassan al Rashid was no longer just interested in Anne. He was officially obsessed, and obsessed men do reckless things, reckless enough to change entire kingdoms. Hassan spent the entire night researching Thai restaurants in the village as if it were a matter of national security. Malik watched in horror and fascination as the future king of Zahara called establishments, asking about 2 top tables, hours, menus. "Your Highness," Malik said for the 3rd time. "This is absurd." She didn't even confirm she'd show up. Hassan didn't look up from his laptop. "She'll come." By 6 o'clock the next evening, Hassan was at his 3rd Thai restaurant of the night. Having been politely told by the first 2 that there were no reservations for Hassan, and no young woman had asked for him. The Pad Thai garden was small. Only 12 tables decorated simply but authentically, the air thick with exotic spices. Hassan chose a table facing the door and waited, checking his watch every 2 minutes. At 7:15, just as disappointment began to set in, Anne walked in. Hair loose in soft waves over an emerald blouse, jeans that hugged her curves, a smile on her lips that clearly said, "I doubted you could find me." Hassan shot to his feet, pulling out her chair automatically. "Started to doubt me?" Anne asked, sitting down. "Never," Hassan lied, the relief on his face so obvious it made her laugh. "I took my time to make sure you wanted this badly enough to search." "I did," Hassan said, smiling. "I searched 4 places. This was the 5th on my list." "Good," Anne said, opening the menu. "Men who give up easily don't interest me." The blunt confession sent a warm rush through Hassan's chest. It was the first real sign that maybe, just maybe, he was gaining ground. "And what kind of man does interest you?" he asked. Anne studied him for a moment as if deciding whether he deserved honesty. "Smart, someone who makes me laugh, someone who isn't afraid of a strong woman." She paused. "And someone who doesn't lie about accidents with clothing." Hassan had the decency to look embarrassed. "In my defense, it worked. It worked because I let it," Anne corrected. "If I truly didn't want to see you, I'd have sent another seamstress." The admission was casual, but the impact, devastating. Hassan felt like he had just won the first battle in a very long war. During 2 hours, they talked about everything and nothing. Hassan learned Anne had lost her parents at 17, that she cared for Grandma Rose as her only family, that she studied international business because she wanted to build bridges between cultures. Anne learned Hassan spoke 6 languages, that he played piano when he was nervous, that he'd turned down Oxford to study policy at MIT because he wanted to understand America. "Why America?" Anne asked, twirling noodles. "Because here you believe anyone can become anything," Hassan said. "In my world, you're born a prince or you're born wrong. And you?" She lifted a brow. "Born right or wrong?" He smiled, but there was melancholy in it. "I'm still figuring that out." When Hassan insisted on paying the bill, Anne didn't protest, but she didn't gush either. On the sidewalk, while she waited for a cab, Hassan gathered his courage. "Anne, would you have dinner with me again?" She studied him, catching the genuine hope in his eyes. "Maybe," she said at last. "But next time I choose everything. The place, the time, the rules." "What rules?" "No security watching from dark cars on the street," Anne said, subtly pointing to the black Mercedes across the way. Hassan followed her gaze and saw Malik in the back seat, trying to be invisible. "How did you— Please, you think I didn't notice 3 men in suits checking every exit when I arrived?" She smiled. "Next time, come alone, like a normal man." "I'm not a normal man," Hassan said quietly. "When you're with me, you can try to be," she answered. The cab pulled up. Hassan opened the door for her, pure reflex. Before getting in, Anne turned and kissed his cheek quickly. "Thanks for the evening, Hassan." The kiss was brief, casual, and left his skin burning where her lips had touched. Hassan stood on the curb watching the taxi disappear, his hand unconsciously going to that spot. In the Mercedes, Malik let out a heavy sigh. The smile on Hassan's face was unmistakable. He'd tasted victory and now he was hooked. 3 days later, Hassan had a new, brilliant idea. Instead of ruining another garment, he'd send flowers to Anne's shop. Classic red roses with a simple card. "Thank you for a wonderful night." They came back the same day with a note in Anne's elegant handwriting. Too cliché. Try again. Hassan laughed alone in his office while Malik watched with growing resignation. "She returned the flowers," Malik noted. "She's testing me," Hassan corrected. "And I love it." The next day, he sent exotic purple orchids. They came back with a note. Better, but still predictable. On the third day, Hassan sent small succulents in handmade ceramic pots with the card, "Plants that survive anything, like a few people I know." The plants did not return. Hassan was plotting his next move when Margaret announced an unexpected visitor. "Yasmin Al-Fayed is here to see you, Your Highness." Hassan frowned. Yasmin was the daughter of a family friend. Beautiful, sophisticated, exactly the kind of woman the royal family would approve. She was also everything Anne was not, predictable. Yasmin entered the suite like she owned it. Red dress worth more than a mid-range car, jewelry discreet but priceless. "Hassan Habibi," she said, kissing his cheeks with too much familiarity. "I've missed you." He returned the greeting politely but kept his distance. "Yasmin, what a surprise." "I was in New York to shop and thought I'd visit," she said, settling onto the sofa as if she planned to stay. "Father said you've been here for weeks." "Business? Something like that," Hassan replied vaguely. Yasmin smiled, the calculated smile she'd perfected since adolescence. "I hope you have a few nights free for old friends." That was when Margaret announced, "Miss Richardson has arrived." Hassan's pulse jumped, though Yasmin only arched a curious brow. "Richardson? I don't know that name." Anne stepped in with her case, wearing a yellow blouse that lit her skin and jeans that showed long legs. When she saw Yasmin enthroned on the sofa like a queen, she paused for a fraction of a second. "Pardon me," Anne said, voice perfectly controlled. "I didn't know you had company." Hassan stood quickly. "And this is Yasmin Al-Fayed, a family friend." Yasmin Ann Richardson, the specialist seamstress I mentioned. The word seamstress sounded deliberately small in Hassan's mouth, and Anne caught it. Yasmin studied Anne like a predator assessing territory. "Oh, the American everyone's talking about," she said in English with a French lilt. "Hassan told me about your work." The pause before work was intentional. Anne smiled, the sharp smile Hassan had learned to fear and adore. "I hope he only shared good things, only that you're very competent," Yasmin replied, the insult wrapped in a silky compliment. It must be comforting for Hassan to have someone so practical around. Anne set her case down with deliberate calm. "Yasmin, is it? Beautiful name. Persian, right? It means jasmine." Yasmin nodded, surprised at Anne's knowledge. "A lovely flower, though it wilts quickly without constant care." The silence that followed crackled. Hassan watched, fascinated as the two women measured each other without a single direct blow. Yasmin leaned toward Hassan, placing a proprietary hand on his arm. "Hassan, darling, you didn't forget our dinner tonight, did you?" Anne's face stayed neutral, but Hassan caught the faint tension in her shoulders. "Actually," he said, gently removing Yasmin's hand, "I'm already committed this evening." He looked straight at Anne. "Unless our plans have changed?" Anne searched his face for honesty. "They haven't," she said at last. 8 o'clock, as agreed. Yasmin blinked, not expecting to be dismissed by an American seamstress. "Well," she said, rising with forced grace, "perhaps tomorrow then." She kissed Hassan's cheek again, leaving a red mark of lipstick this time. "Don't forget who you are, Habibi." And she swept out, her expensive perfume hanging in the air like a threat. Anne opened her case methodically, ignoring the leftover tension. "Third ruined garment this week?" she asked without looking up. "Actually," Hassan said, "this time it's real. A genuine accident." Anne lifted her eyes and found sincerity there. Your first honest accident, progress." But as she began to work, Hassan noticed her movements were a shade tighter than usual. "Anne," he said softly. "Yasmin is beautiful," Anne finished. "Sophisticated. Exactly the kind of woman a prince should be with." Hassan stepped closer. "Not the kind of woman I'm interested in." Anne stopped, looking at him. "And what kind are you interested in?" He smiled, that slow, dangerous smile. The kind who returns my flowers and stabs me with needles. Anne tried to hide a smile and he saw it. Idiot, she muttered. But there was warmth in it, and Hassan knew he was gaining more than ground against Anne Richardson's defenses. He was winning small pieces of her heart. Hassan woke the next morning with a completely new strategy. If Anne liked to be challenged, he would give her challenges. If she wanted a normal man, he would be normal. If she hated romantic cliches, he would be creative. Malik found him in the office at 6 a.m., studying a map of Brooklyn like a general planning an invasion. "Hassan, what are you doing?" "Research," he said, circling addresses. "The Syrian grocery where Anne practices Arabic. The library where she studies. The cafe where she eats breakfast." "You're going to spy on her?" Malik asked, horrified. "I'm going to show up casually where she happens to be. There's a difference." Malik sighed, knowing it was useless to argue. "And if she notices?" Hassan smiled, that dangerous smile. "Then she'll see how interested I am." At 8, Hassan stood in line at Sunrise Bakery, wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and a baseball cap, trying to pass as a regular New Yorker. When Anne walked in, hair in a ponytail after her morning workout, he feigned perfect surprise. "Anne, what a coincidence." She stopped, studying his face with growing suspicion. "Hassan, what are you doing here?" "Coffee," he said, lifting his cup. "And apparently the best croissants in Brooklyn. How did you find this place?" she asked, one brow arched. "Hotel concierge recommendation," he lied. "Why?" "Because it's 3 blocks from my house and you'd never stepped foot in Brooklyn before you met me." He had the decency to look embarrassed. "Maybe I asked where you get breakfast." "Maybe?" she echoed, now amused. "Fine, definitely asked. And maybe I came hoping to run into you." Anne shook her head, caught between irritation and charm she didn't want to admit. "You're impossible, but persistent," Hassan said. "May I buy your coffee?" "You may," Anne said, surprising them both. "But only because you admitted you've been following me." Hassan smiled. One small, meaningful victory. At the counter, he ordered in fluent Arabic from the Syrian owner, who beamed and answered in kind. Anne watched, fascinated, as the two men spoke of family, business, and life in New York. "Impressed?" Hassan asked as they stepped outside. "A little," Anne admitted. "I thought your Arabic was just diplomatic, but you really connect with people." Hassan stopped walking. "You think I'm only protocol in politics?" Anne studied him, seeing genuine curiosity in the question. "I don't know what you are beyond what you've shown me, and so far you've only shown me a prince." "Then give me the chance to show more," he said. "How?" "Come with me today. No agenda, no plans, no destination, just see who I am when I don't have to be a prince." Anne hesitated, the battle clear on her face. "Hassan, if you hate it, I'll never ask again. But if you like it..." He left the sentence hanging, eyes full of hope. Anne looked at him. Messy hair under a baseball cap, stubble from the morning, vulnerability written across his face. "One afternoon," she said at last, "and you pay for the cab ride home." Hassan's smile lit up his entire face. "Deal." The next 6 hours were a revelation. He took her across the Brooklyn Bridge, explaining its engineering with genuine passion. They stopped at a small independent bookstore where he bought her a collection of Arabic poetry translated into English. "You should know our poetry," he told her, "not just our business language." They ate lunch at a Moroccan food truck where Hassan spoke to the vendor in a dialect Anne recognized but couldn't follow. "Berber," Hassan explained when she asked. "My grandmother's language." She insisted all the grandchildren learn it. Anne saw an entirely different side of him, not a prince showing off knowledge, but a man sharing heritage that clearly meant everything to him. "Tell me about your grandmother," Anne asked as they walked through Prospect Park. Hassan's smile softened, touched with nostalgia. "The strongest woman I've ever known. She ruled my grandfather, raised 6 children, and still found time to teach us stories, language, tradition. She died when I was 15, but her voice still guides me." "That's why culture matters so much to you," Anne observed. Hassan stopped, looking at her with something like awe. "Most people only see power, wealth, politics when they look at me. You see, me." Anne felt something shift in her chest. A wall carefully built was beginning to crack. By late afternoon, they stumbled on a street fair where Hassan insisted on winning her a stuffed animal. 15 minutes later, After endless failed attempts at the ring toss, Anne laughed so hard she had tears in her eyes. "You're terrible at this," she said. "Hopeless, but fun?" Hassan asked, aiming again. "Very," Anne admitted, watching his concentration. When he finally won a small purple elephant, he presented it with exaggerated ceremony that made nearby kids giggle. "Your prize, my lady." Anne accepted it, warmth blooming in her chest. No one had tried so hard just to make her laugh, and she couldn't even remember when. They sat on a bench overlooking the water, the elephant between them like a secret. "Hassan," Anne whispered, "can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Why me?" "The truth. No charm, no lines. Just truth." Hassan stayed silent for a long time, watching the boats in the distance. "Because when I look at you, I don't see someone who wants something from me," he said at last. "I see someone who would be perfectly fine if she never saw me again. And that's refreshing. Terrifying, but refreshing." He turned to face her. "And because you stabbed me with a needle the day we met. No one dares hurt a prince, even when the prince deserves it." Anne studied his face, sincerity making her heart pound faster. "I'm not trying to be difficult," she said softly. "I'm just careful. Men like you usually want trophies, not partners." Hassan reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "And what if I want a partner?" Before she could answer, the sky opened. A sudden summer downpour sent people running for cover. Hassan immediately shrugged off his jacket, holding it over them as they sprinted for shelter. Pressed close together under a narrow doorway, Anne could feel his warmth, smell his cologne through the damp fabric. "This is becoming a pattern," Anne said, glancing at his face only inches from hers. "You and unexpected weather." "Maybe the universe is trying to tell us something," Hassan whispered, rain dripping from his hair, eyes dropping to her lips. "Hassan," she began, but the words dissolved as he leaned closer. Rain pounded around them, a curtain of privacy on a busy street. "Anne," he murmured, "may I?" She stopped him with a finger against his lips. "Not yet," she whispered, "but close." Hassan closed his eyes, resting his forehead against hers. "How close?" "Close enough that you should probably step back before I do something stupid," she breathed. He smiled against her skin. "Define stupid." "Kissing a prince in a doorway, in the middle of a storm, like some ridiculous movie." "Sounds perfectly reasonable to me," Hassan murmured, making her laugh despite the tension. When the rain finally stopped, they parted reluctantly. Walking back toward the subway, Anne knew something had shifted. This was no longer just attraction. It was connection, the kind that scared her, the kind that made her want what she had sworn to avoid. "Anne," Hassan said as they reached the station. "Dinner tomorrow? A real date, no games, no tests." Anne looked at him, seeing hope and vulnerability tangled together. "All right," she said simply. "But I choose the restaurant again." "Anywhere you want," Hassan agreed instantly. As she started down the steps, Anne turned back. "Hassan?" He leaned forward, eager. "Thank you for today, for showing me who you are when you're not being a prince." Hassan's smile could have lit half of Brooklyn. "Thank you for letting me." Watching her disappear into the subway, he realized he was completely, utterly, hopelessly in love with Anne Richardson, and for the first time in his life he had no idea what to do about it. All he knew was that he would do anything, absolutely anything, to make her fall in love with him too, even if it meant giving up being a prince altogether. That night, Hassan spent hours planning how to escape his security detail without sparking an international incident. By 6 a.m., he was at a rental lot in Queens, using old documents he'd once secured for emergencies. The silver Toyota Camry was the opposite of everything he represented. Ordinary, discreet, anonymous. Perfect for a man who needed to vanish. Malik woke at 7 to find Hassan had evaporated. No security, no driver, no trace. The panic among the guards was epic. But Hassan was far too busy driving through Brooklyn streets, terrified that Anne might say no. At 2 in the afternoon, Anne stepped out of her shop and froze at the sight of Hassan leaning against the Camry like any ordinary New Yorker. Faded jeans, plain white t-shirt, cheap sunglasses from a pharmacy. If she hadn't known who he was, she never would have guessed. "My God," she said, stopping on the sidewalk. "You actually did it." "Did what?" Hassan asked, playing innocent as he opened the passenger door for her. Stole a car? Faked documents? Escaped my own security team? Anne laughed, shaking her head. All of the above. Worth it, Hassan said, for a few hours of being normal with you. Anne slid into the seat, the scent of rented car mixing with Hassan's nervous energy. Where are we going? Central Park, he said, starting the engine with slightly trembling hands. I want to walk with you like normal people do. No guards, no protocol. No one watching. Anne studied his profile as he drove. You're nervous. Terrified, Hassan admitted. First time I've ever done something like this. Escaping security. Being completely alone with a woman who might break my heart, he said, glancing at her. Warmth spread through Anne's chest. The raw honesty in his voice was more seductive than any princely gesture. They parked near the entrance. Hassan lingered before switching off the engine, as if the car's anonymity was his last anchor to safety. Last chance to back out, Anne said, reading the tension in his shoulders. For me or for you? For both of us. Hassan got out, walked around to her side, and held out his hand. He wore a nervous smile she'd never seen before. No royal poise, no diplomatic confidence. Just a 30-year-old man terrified of his own feelings. Anne laced her fingers through his. Hassan closed his eyes as though trying to memorize the moment. You know what's strange? Hassan said as they walked the main path through Central Park, passing families picnicking and morning joggers. What? For the first time in years, no one's watching me. No one's analyzing my every move. No one's calculating the political implications of me simply being here. He stopped, turning to her. Except you. Anne felt the weight of his words. I'm not analyzing you politically, Hassan. I know, he said quietly. That's what terrifies me. You see me as a man, not a prince. And what if I'm not enough? Anne stopped walking, forcing him to stop too. Do you really think I'd be here if you weren't? Hassan glanced around, children swinging, elderly couples feeding ducks at the pond, teenagers tossing frisbees. Normal life, ordinary and precious in its simplicity. When I was a child, he said softly, I used to dream of days like this. Just existing. No ceremonies. No protocols. No kingdom on my shoulders. And now? Anne asked, still holding his hand.
Now I'm realizing that freedom is terrifying.
When you finally have something, someone to lose. He turned to her fully and she saw something desperate in his eyes. Anne, I need to tell you something. And I need to say it before I lose my nerve again. Her heart raced. What? Hassan drew a deep breath like a man about to leap off a cliff. I love you completely, madly, irrevocably. I know it's insane. I know it complicates everything. I know I might be asking you to give up a normal life for one I can't even promise you. But I can't pretend this is just a passing infatuation anymore. Anne froze, the world around them slowing down. Children's laughter, the hum of traffic, all fading into background noise as his words echoed in her mind. I love you, Hassan, she began, but he shook his head quickly. No, let me finish. I have to say it all before I lose the courage. He raked a nervous hand through his hair, a gesture she had never seen from him. I know we've only known each other a few weeks. I know you have your life here, your atelier, your dreams. I know I'm asking the impossible, to imagine a life where every move we make will be scrutinized, where privacy will be rare, where you'll be forced to learn diplomatic protocols and smile at people who might never accept you because you weren't born royal. Anne opened her mouth, but he pushed on, words spilling out like a confession long suppressed. I know it's selfish. That maybe I should let you go, let you find someone normal, someone who can give you quiet Sundays, dinners without security, children who can play in the park without an escort. His voice dropped, raw. But Anne, when I'm with you for the first time in my life, I'm not just Prince Hassan. I'm simply Hassan, the man who laughs at your awful jokes, who falls in love with the way you talk about fabric, who wants to wake up every day knowing you chose me. A couple strolled past, holding hands, and Anne caught the irony. Here they were, living the kind of ordinary moment Hassan craved, but a future that might be impossible for them. Are you finished? Anne asked gently. Hassan nodded, drained. Finished. Anne let go of his hand, and for a terrifying second he thought she was leaving. Instead, she cupped his face in both hands, forcing him to meet her gaze. First, she said firmly, stop deciding what's best for me. I'm a grown woman and I choose which risks I take. Hassan blinked, startled by her strength. Second, you really think I'd still be here if I didn't know exactly who you are and what that means? Third, she continued, a smile tugging at her lips. You think a woman who fought for years to keep a workshop in New York, who works in art, the most uncertain profession there is afraid of complications? Hope sparked in Hassan's chest. And fourth, she whispered, rising on her toes so her lips were close to his ear. I love you too, you dramatic idiot. For a moment, Hassan couldn't process the words. Then, like a man dying of thirst finding water, he kissed her, right there in the middle of Central Park. No ceremony, no protocol, nothing but the truth that they loved each other. When they finally broke apart, Hassan pressed his forehead to hers. Are you sure? Because once we say this out loud, once we embrace it, there's no going back. The media, my family, the royal protocol, everything will change. Anne smiled, brushing her thumb along his cheek. Hassan, my life already changed the moment you walked into my shop and looked at those garments like they held your secrets. I'm not afraid of more change. And if I can't protect you from all that comes with it, what if I don't need protecting? What if we're partners in this? Anne leaned back just enough to meet his eyes. Look, I won't pretend I'm not nervous. I won't pretend it won't be hard. But Hassan, when I'm with you, I feel like someone finally sees all of me. Not just the artist, not just the independent woman, but every piece of me. Hassan closed his eyes, the weight on his shoulders lifting. Then what do we do now? Anne laughed, taking his hand again. Now we keep walking. Then we grab lunch somewhere completely ordinary where nobody knows who you are. And after that, we see what happens. Is it really that simple? The best things usually are, she said, pulling him along. At least at the beginning. As they wandered deeper into the park, Hassan felt something he hadn't in years. Not just happiness, but the real possibility of a future he actually wanted. Not the one planned for him, not the one duty demanded, but one he and Anne would build, choice by choice. Anne, he said after a stretch of comfortable silence. Yes? Thank you for letting me just be Hassan today. Anne squeezed his hand. Thank you for choosing to be him with me. 3 hours later, they sat in a tiny Italian cafe in the village, sharing a plate of carbonara like any ordinary couple, when Hassan's phone started buzzing nonstop. He'd silenced calls all afternoon, but now notifications flooded the screen. 47 missed calls, 82 texts, 15 urgent emails, Malik, Anne asked, watching his expression shift from contentment to concern. Among others, Hassan muttered, scrolling fast. The ambassador, my private secretary, the head of security. He froze at one message, his face paling. My brother. Anne's stomach tightened. What happened? Hassan read aloud. Hassan, where the hell are you? Father is furious. The press caught photos of you leaving the hotel alone this morning. CNN is speculating about a diplomatic crisis. Get back now. He set the phone on the table as if it were about to explode. Photos? Anne repeated, reality sinking in. Hassan nodded grimly, pulling up the news. The headlines flashed immediately. Prince Hassan disappears in New York. Security crisis. Royal heir escapes escort. Where is the prince? Mystery in Manhattan. The photos were grainy, shot from a distance, but unmistakable. Hassan leaving the hotel. Hassan at the rental lot. Hassan driving through Brooklyn. And the last one, Anne gasped into her wine, showed them leaving her shop together. Shit, Anne whispered. The caption, Hassan said tensely. Prince Hassan spotted leaving a Brooklyn atelier with seamstress Anne Richardson. Nature of relationship unknown. He looked at her across the table. Anne, I'm sorry. I didn't think they'd... Of course you did. Anne cut in, startling him with her calm. You knew this could happen. We both did. She drew a deep breath. The question is, what do we do now? The phone buzzed again. Malik, for the 15th time. Hassan finally answered. Malik, where are you? Malik's voice was so loud Anne heard it across the table. Hassan, for God's sake, this situation is chaos. The ambassador's losing his mind. Your father is threatening to fly here personally, and CNN is live outside the hotel speculating you've been kidnapped. I'm fine, Malik, I'm safe. Where are you? Malik repeated, calmer now but still tense. And please tell me you're not with that woman. Hassan looked at Anne, who could hear every word. She gave a small nod, silent permission. I'm with Anne, Hassan said. And before you start, Malik, I love her. We're going to have to deal with that. The silence on the line stretched so long, Hassan thought the call had dropped. When Malik spoke again, his voice was unnervingly controlled. Hassan, listen to me very carefully. You have 20 minutes to get back to the hotel before I'm forced to call the FBI. The diplomatic situation you created today could have consequences far beyond a broken heart. It's not a whim. Malik, I don't care what it is. Malik exploded. You are the crown prince of a kingdom. You cannot just disappear for a romantic date. There are protocols. There are treaties. There is a reason you have security. Anne leaned forward and raised her voice so he could hear. Malik, it's Anne. Another pause. Then, Miss Richardson. Look, I understand you're worried. And Hassan will come back to the hotel. But you need to understand something. This isn't a whim. If you want this to work, if you want Hassan to be happy and still be a good prince, then stop treating us like children sneaking out. Hassan stared at her, half awe, half terror. Anne, speaking directly to Malik, felt like declaring war on royal protocol. Miss Richardson, Malik said evenly, with respect, you don't understand the complexity of what you two created today. Then explain it to me, Anne said simply, but treat me like an intelligent adult who can understand complexity, not a distraction to be managed. Hassan could almost hear Malik wrestling with himself on the other end. Finally, both of you, back to the hotel now. We'll talk. When Hassan hung up, they sat in silence, the weight of their new reality settling between them. So, Anne said at last, this is how our normal life begins. Hassan laughed once, humorless. Anne, you can still walk away. You can still leave before it gets worse. Anne took his hand across the table. Hassan, look at me. He did. 3 hours ago, you told me you loved me in the middle of Central Park. I told you I loved you back. Do you really think a few grainy photos and a stressed-out aide are going to change my mind? And when it's my family? The international press? When it's... He stopped, shaking his head. You have no idea what's coming. Then teach me, Anne said. We're partners, remember? Stop protecting me from information and start preparing me for reality. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. First lesson. When we get back to the hotel, there will be cameras. A lot of them. They'll shout questions, try to separate us, do anything to get a reaction. What do? We walk together. We don't answer. I keep your hand in mine and I don't let anyone pull us apart. He drew a steadying breath. Then we talk to Malik and figure out how to make this official. Official? Hassan smiled. And for the first time since seeing the headlines, he looked like the confident man she knew. Anne, if we're doing this, we're doing it right. No secret relationship. No hidden meetings. If you're going to be mine, the whole world will know. Anne felt a mix of fear and excitement. And if I'm not ready for the whole world, then we wait until you are, he said simply. But the longer we wait, the worse it gets. Speculation, stolen photos, pressure. It's better if we control our own narrative. Anne nodded, understanding the logic even as butterflies swarmed her stomach. Then let's go home and face the music. Home? She smiled. Your hotel. Our first official crisis as a couple. Hassan called for the check. While they waited, Anne asked, Hassan, one last question before we go back to reality. Anything. Was it worth it? These hours of normal life? Hassan looked around the tiny cafe. The intimate tables, the Italian owner shouting in the kitchen, the elderly couple sharing tiramisu. Then back at Anne. Every second, he said. And when the storm passes, when we learn how to navigate this, we'll find a way to have more days like this. Promise. Prince's promise. Anne laughed. The best kind. The hotel perimeter had turned into a circus. Anne counted at least 15 TV vans, dozens of photographers, and a crowd of onlookers pushed back by police barricades. Hassan's silver Camry looked absurdly ordinary in the chaos, like two lost tourists stumbling into a war zone. Jesus, Anne murmured as the flashes began the moment the car was recognized. You can still stay in the car, Hassan said, though there was no conviction in it. They both knew hiding now would only make things worse. No, Anne said, squaring her shoulders. We said we'd face this together. She glanced at Hassan, catching the tension in his jaw. What's the protocol for this? In theory, walk with confidence, ignore the questions, maintain dignity. He inhaled. In practice? Total improvisation. I've never done this with anyone who wasn't family or a diplomat. Anne took his hand. Then we improvised together. When they stepped out, the noise was thunderous. Reporters' shouts tangled with the machine gun click of camera shutters and the whir of drones overhead. Prince Hassan, where have you been? Miss, what's your name? Hassan, is your father furious? Hassan kept Anne's hand clenched in his, navigating a sea of microphones and invasive lenses. Anne forced her chin up, her expression neutral, even when a photographer practically blocked her path to get a close-up. Prince Hassan, a CNN reporter shouted, "Can you confirm you slipped your security for a romantic date?" Hassan hesitated. Anne felt it in his grip and knew he was about to answer. She squeezed back, a silent reminder of their plan. Not now, not here, not without control. Malik appeared at the hotel entrance like an avenging angel, flanked by security carving a corridor through the crowd. "Prince Hassan, miss," he said loudly enough for the microphones to catch. "This way, please." The lobby buzzed with tension. Staff whispered in clusters. Guests pointed discreetly. Anne spotted at least 3 men in suits who were clearly not tourists, federal agents or additional diplomatic security. "Private elevator," Malik murmured, guiding them quickly. "We have a situation to control." In the elevator's hush, Anne finally processed what had just happened. "My God," she breathed. "That was intense," Hassan finished. "And that was the easy part." The doors opened directly into Hassan's suite, where a small crowd was waiting. Anne recognized the ambassador to the United States from Hassan's country, tall and silver-haired from the news. There was an elegant woman with a laptop, 2 men in matching suits screaming "press office," and, surprisingly, a dignified older woman whose wardrobe blended Western elegance with traditional touches. "My Aunt Amira," Hassan said, resigned. Royal advisor and apparently emergency envoy. The woman approached with the poised ferocity of someone used to managing the impossible. Her dark eyes evaluated Anne from head to toe in 3 seconds before turning to Hassan. "Nephew," she said in flawless, British-tinged English, "you have created an interesting situation." "Aunt Amira," Hassan replied respectfully, "I'd like you to meet Anne Richardson. Anne, this is Her Highness Princess Amira, royal advisor and the smartest person I know." Anne offered her hand, but Amira surprised her with a formal embrace. "Miss Richardson, I've heard a great deal about you in the last 4 hours." 4 hours? The time it took me to fly from Washington after the photos surfaced, Amira said with a smile that never reached her eyes. "We need to talk." Malik gestured for everyone to sit in the suite's living area. "All right," he began, "to business. Here's our current situation. Intense international media interest, wild speculation about the nature of your relationship, and significant diplomatic pressure regarding how to handle it." "Diplomatic pressure?" Anne asked. The ambassador leaned forward. "Miss Richardson, when a crown prince vanishes from his security detail on foreign soil, it creates complications. There are protocols, treaties, national security concerns." "I'm not a terrorist," Anne said dryly. "I'm a Brooklyn seamstress." "We know who you are," Amira replied gently. "The question is what we do with that information now." Hassan leaned in. "Aunt Anne and I have decided to be transparent about our relationship. No secrets, no hidden meetings. If we're together, it will be official. I met Anne when I needed her professional help for an urgent repair on a traditional garment," Hassan said. "I was impressed by her craft, and by her." "Miss Richardson," a reporter from the New York Times called out, "how would you characterize your relationship at this moment?" Anne drew a steady breath. "We're getting to know each other. Hassan is an exceptional man, beyond his title, and I'm interested in seeing where this connection can lead. But would you consider it serious enough for Anne to eventually move to your country?" asked a BBC reporter. Hassan and Anne exchanged a quick glance. "It's too early for that kind of speculation," Anne said, using Malik's exact phrase. "We're focused on truly getting to know each other over the next weeks and months." "Prince Hassan," someone shouted from the back, "does your family approve of this relationship?" "My family is getting to know Anne and appreciates her intelligence and independence," Hassan replied smoothly. "Miss Richardson, do you have any prior experience with public life? Are you prepared for the level of scrutiny that comes with dating royalty?" Anne felt every camera lock onto her. Honestly, I don't have experience with this, and no, I'm probably not fully prepared. But I'm willing to learn, and I have an excellent team helping me navigate this new reality. One last question, Malik announced, clearly eager to end before anyone lobbed a grenade. For both of you, a Washington Post reporter said. What do you say to people who think this relationship is just a distraction from Prince Hassan's duties? Anne felt Hassan tense beside her, but she stepped to the mic first. I'd say everyone, prince or not, deserves a chance at genuine connection and personal happiness. Hassan doesn't stop being a dedicated prince because he chooses a personal life. If anything, fulfilled people often make better leaders. She paused, and I'd add that anyone who thinks an independent woman with her own career is a distraction might want to re-examine their assumptions. The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like forever. Then someone began to clap and others joined. Hassan leaned into the microphone one last time. Thank you for coming. We hope you'll respect our privacy as we navigate this new chapter. As they left the room, Anne's knees trembled. How did we do? She asked Malik. Honestly? Malik said, looking almost surprised. You were perfect. Amira appeared beside them with a genuine smile. Especially you, Anne. That last answer was masterful. I felt like I was defending a thesis, Anne said. Still processing. In many ways, Hassan replied. You were. But the media honeymoon lasted exactly 36 hours. By Sunday morning, Anne woke to her phone vibrating nonstop. Unknown numbers, but also her friend Sarah, Grandma Rose, people she hadn't spoken to in years. Hassan walked in with his laptop, face dark. Anne, you need to see this. The page 6 headline made her choke. Prince's girlfriend's troubled past exposed. The piece splashed old college photos. Anne at a party, holding a drink and laughing. Harmless images, framed as evidence of questionable behavior. Worse, there was an interview with her former roommate, Brittany, someone Anne hadn't seen in 2 years. Anne was always ambitious, Brittany said to camera, wearing a practiced smile. She used to talk about finding a rich man who could change her life. I'm not surprised she landed a prince. Anne's stomach flipped. Brittany was lying, but to strangers it sounded plausible. It's a lie, Hassan said firmly. I know, Anne answered, her voice shaking. The problem is millions don't. Her phone rang again. Grandma Rose Bambina, came the fragile, furious voice. Reporters have been here since 6 a.m., asking about you, about our family, about... The call dropped. Anne looked at Hassan and saw her own panic mirrored in his face. They're harassing my grandmother. Malik already dispatched security, Hassan said quickly. She'll be safe, but Anne was already moving, grabbing her keys. I have to go home now. Anne, wait. You can't just leave, it'll be chaos. Hassan, she said, turning to him with eyes bright from angry tears. They're going after a 78-year-old woman because of me. I don't care about chaos. For the first time since they met, Anne Richardson walked out without looking back, leaving Hassan to realize the rules had changed. It wasn't just them against the world anymore. It was about protecting the people they loved from the fallout of their love. Anne reached Brooklyn to find Grandma Rose's atelier ringed by reporters and onlookers. 3 TV vans lined the street, cameras trained on the tiny storefront that had been her sanctuary all her life. Through the window, she saw Grandma Rose in her usual chair, magnificently ignoring the storm outside as she stitched. Damn, Anne whispered, harking 2 blocks away. Her phone rang immediately. Hassan. Anne, where are you? Malik sent a security team. I'm already here, she said, spotting 2 dark-suited guards posted discreetly near the entrance. And I see your people. Please don't leave the car until they reach you, Hassan said, voice tight. They'll escort you inside. Hassan, this is my neighborhood. I'm not being escorted into my own home. She hung up before he could answer. Anne inhaled, squared her shoulders, and stepped out. Reporters clocked her instantly. Anne Richardson. Is it true about your past? Did you say you wanted a rich man? How do you respond to the accusations? Anne walked through the crowd without answering, chin up, eyes fixed on the door. One of Hassan's guards carved a path, murmuring, "Excuse us," in several languages, and got her to the entrance without incident. Inside, Grandma Rose looked up and smiled as if it were any ordinary Sunday. Ah, Bambina, just in time for coffee. But her eyes burned with a mix of anger and worry Anne knew too well. Nonna, are you okay? Anne kneeled beside the chair, scanning her grandmother for any sign of distress. Those vultures have been here since dawn. Rose sniffed, flicking a dismissive hand toward the window. They thought an old Italian woman would be scared of a few cameras. Anne laughed for the first time in hours. Of course not. But Bambina, Rose said, taking Anne's hands in hers. The story they're telling, it's a dirty lie. I know, Nonna, Brittany was always jealous. She's lying because someone paid well for a negative take. Rose nodded, then studied her granddaughter's face carefully. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Anne sighed. I don't know. Hassan thinks we should ignore it, that it'll pass. But seeing you harassed, our life invaded. Her voice wavered. Anne Richardson, Rose said, firm as steel. You were raised to face bullies, not run from them. She pointed to a stack of newspapers on the table. I read about your prince. He seems a good man, but if you're going to be with him, you'll have to fight for what matters. And we matter. Anne's phone rang again. Hassan. This time she answered, I'm okay. Nonna is okay. Your security's doing a good job. And I'm so sorry. This spun out of control faster than any of us imagined. Hassan, I need to ask you something. Anything. Did you know this would happen? That they'd go after my family? Hassan hesitated for a fraction, just enough. Malik mentioned it as a possibility. And you didn't tell me. It wasn't a question. And I didn't want to frighten you before the conference. Hassan, listen very carefully. If we're going to make this work, you cannot protect me from information. You don't get to decide what I can or can't handle. Because right now my 78-year-old grandmother is being harassed. Because of decisions made without my full knowledge. She let the silence stretch until the message landed. From now on, Anne said softly but immovably, no more surprises. We fight together or not at all. The silence on the line stretched. You're right, Hassan said at last. I should have told you everything. Yes, you should have. And now we fix it. How? Anne looked at Grandma Rose, who was listening with bright approval in her eyes. First, you come here alone, no Malik, no advisors. Second, you meet my grandmother properly. Third, the three of us sit down and decide how to answer these lies. Together. Anne, leaving the hotel right now with all this media attention. Hassan, Anne cut in, if you can't come to Brooklyn to see my family when things get hard, then maybe we should rethink all of this. Another pause. I'm on my way, Hassan. Yes? Thank you. 40 minutes later, Hassan stepped into the atelier doorway. He'd swapped the suit for jeans and a plain t-shirt, dark glasses and a baseball cap. The disguise didn't fool reporters for long, but it bought him just enough time to slip inside before the frenzy reignited. Grandma Rose, Anne said, this is Hassan. Hassan removed the cap and dipped his head, part American respect, part royal protocol. Mrs. Richardson, it's an honor to meet you. Rose studied him for a long moment, taking in the respectful posture, the direct eye contact, the simple fact that he had come because Anne asked. Call me Rose, she said at last, and sit. We have things to discuss. Hassan took the chair Anne pulled over and accepted the coffee Rose offered. Rose, I want you to know how deeply sorry I am that you're going through this because of me. It isn't because of you, Rose said briskly. It's because bad people make money spreading lies. The question is, what are you going to do to protect my granddaughter? Hassan blinked, clearly not expecting to be challenged so directly. We have security, press advisors. Nonsense! Rose waved a hand. That protects you. I'm asking how you will protect her, as a person, as a woman, as the daughter of my heart. Anne watched him absorb the question, something in his expression shifting. Rose, he said slowly, you're right. I've been thinking about managing the situation, not protecting Anne, and that is, he looked at Anne. Exactly what you were trying to tell me. Good, Rose nodded, satisfied. Now let's decide what to do about this Brittany and her lies. Should we sue for defamation? Hassan asked. Anne shook her head. That only gives the story more oxygen. We need something better. We need the truth, Rose said simply. And we're lucky. I have something Brittany doesn't know we have. She went to a drawer and returned with a time-worn folder. All the letters Anne wrote me from college. Each dated, each one showing her real worries and dreams. Anne lifted one, recognizing her younger handwriting. An exam she feared bombing, homesickness, working hard to make her grandmother proud. Not a word about rich men or princes. And Rose added with a mischievous smile, I have something even better. Photos from the party where they took those pictures. Mrs. Chen's birthday. Anne was helping serve food to neighborhood seniors. Pro bono, as always. Hassan looked at the photos, then at Anne, then at Rose. Slowly, a smile formed. Rose, I think you just handed us exactly what we needed. Of course I did, Rose said, very pleased with herself. You don't live to 78 without learning how to handle liars. She fixed Hassan with a serious look. Now, Prince Hassan, let's see if you know how to fight for my girl properly. Hassan leaned forward, a new resolve in his eyes. Rose, with respect, your girl fought for herself today. Now it's my turn to fight for her. He took Anne's hand. Let's show the world who Anne Richardson really is. For the first time since seeing the headlines, Anne smiled and felt it. Maybe, just maybe, they could come out of this stronger than they went in. 3 hours later, Grandma Rose's atelier had become the most unlikely war room in the city. Hassan sat on the floor surrounded by photo albums and old letters, while Anne and Rose organized evidence like detectives building a case. Malik had arrived an hour earlier, initially horrified to find the Crown Prince working on the floor of a Brooklyn shop, now utterly absorbed in strategy. This is brilliant, Malik said for the 5th time, flipping through Anne's letters. We've got 3 years of dated documentation proving exactly who she is. You can't fabricate this, he glanced at Rose with something close to reverence. Ma'am, you should work in intelligence. I did, Rose said casually, freezing everyone. Korean War Communications section. I learned that information is power, and power used well breaks liars. She smiled at Hassan's stunned face. You thought an Italian immigrant was just a seamstress? Hassan laughed, shaking his head. Rose, you're extraordinary. Of course I am. Where do you think Anne got her backbone? She lifted one of the party photos. Now let's use that backbone to end this foolishness. Anne was on the phone with Mrs. Chen, the Korean neighbor who'd hosted the birthday party where the photos were taken. Yes, Mrs. Chen, I know it sounds crazy, but did you keep pictures from that night? A pause. All of them? Even the ones of me serving food to the seniors? Another pause, then Anne grinned. Could you bring them here? It's urgent. When she hung up, Hassan was laying out a timeline on the table. We have the dated letters, the real party photos, witnesses to Anne's volunteer work. Malik, how long to assemble a full response? With this material? We can have something live by morning, Malik said, typing furiously. But we need to be strategic. We can't look desperate or defensive. So how do we do it? Anne asked. Hassan stood, brushing dust from his jeans. We do what you did at the presser. We tell our own story, this time with proof. He looked to Rose. Would you be willing to do an interview? Tell them who Anne really is? Rose squared her shoulders and Anne saw exactly where she'd inherited her steel. Prince Hassan, 60 years ago I came to this country without a word of English. I built a business. I raised a granddaughter after I lost my daughter. You think a few cameras will intimidate me? Absolutely not, Hassan said, smiling. Malik, call that 60 Minutes producer who's always wanted an exclusive with me. Hassan, Malik said carefully, are you sure? Once we do this, we show we're not afraid of the truth, Hassan finished. And that anyone who attacks our family will learn we know how to hit back. Anne felt warmth spread through her chest at the way he said our family. The bell above the door jingled and Mrs. Chen walked in carrying a shoebox full of photos. Anne, dear, I brought everything from the party. And Sarah Kim down the block says she has videos too. She was filming to show her kids back in Korea. Videos? Anne almost shouted. Mrs. Chen, you're an angel. Mrs. Chen smiled, then noticed Hassan and Malik. Oh, you're the important men who are dating our Anne? Hassan coughed, hiding a laugh. Only I'm dating Anne, ma'am. Good, Mrs. Chen said, giving Hassan a critical once-over. She deserves a man who comes to Brooklyn when there's trouble. She pointed at him. You seem decent. But if you hurt our girl, the whole neighborhood will come for you. Understood, Hassan said solemnly, and Anne realized he meant it. Over the next 2 hours, they built a dossier that was part biography, part legal defense, part love letter to Brooklyn. The photos showed Anne helping seniors, teaching kids to sew, working community events. The letters revealed a young woman worried about grades, scraping money to help her grandmother, determined to make a difference. "This isn't just a defense," Malik said, impressed. "It's a full portrait of who Anne really is. It'll make Brittany look even worse for lying." "Good," Rose said. "Liars deserve consequences." Hassan was on the phone with someone at CBS when Anne stepped close. "Hassan," she asked softly, "are you sure about this? Once we start hitting back like this..." Hassan covered the receiver. "Anne, you asked me today if I could come to Brooklyn when things got hard. Now I'm asking you, do you trust me to fight for you the right way?" Anne looked around the atelier. Her sanctuary turned war room, her grandmother commanding like a general, her neighborhood rallying to defend her. "Yes," she said. "I trust you." The room fell silent. Anne could still hear the muffled roar of the crowd outside. "Even 30 floors up, Hassan," Amira said at last. "Do you understand that making this relationship official means subjecting Miss Richardson to the most intense scrutiny imaginable? Every part of her life, her past, her family, her friends, will be dissected publicly." "I understand," Anne said before Hassan could reply. "And I accept it." "You accept it now," one of the press advisors cut in. "But when they dig into your past, when they comb through your bank records, when every mistake you've ever made becomes a headline..." "Then prepare me for it," Anne interrupted. "Teach me how to handle it. Tell me what to expect, but stop trying to scare me into giving up." For the first time since her arrival, Amira smiled. "She has spirit, Hassan. I like that. The real question," Malik said, "is how we make this work in practice. And do you understand that a serious relationship with Hassan would eventually mean leaving your current life, moving to our country, learning our culture, taking on real responsibilities?" Anne's stomach tightened, but her voice stayed firm. "Eventually, maybe, but not right away. Hassan and I need time to know each other in different contexts to see if this can truly work long term." "And in the meantime?" asked the ambassador. "In the meantime," Hassan said, "we divide our time. Some weeks in New York, some weeks in my country. Anne meets my family, I support her work here. We learn how to navigate this together." "And the media?" one advisor pressed. Amira leaned back, studying them both. "We make an official announcement. We control the narrative. We make clear this is a serious but gradual relationship. And we set firm boundaries on privacy. Will that work?" Anne asked. "For a while," Amira said honestly. "Until it works. Or until it doesn't." Anne looked at Hassan, seeing the tension in his shoulders, the weight of expectation on him. "And if we don't work? If we find this is too good to be true? Then," Hassan said, taking her hand, "at least we tried. At least we won't spend our lives wondering what if." Amira clapped her hands once, a decisive sound. "Very well. Malik, prepare a press release. Something simple, elegant. Confirm the relationship without unnecessary detail. Schedule a press conference for tomorrow morning." "Press conference?" Anne choked. "Welcome to modern royalty, my dear," Amira said, this time with a genuine smile. "First rule, always control your own story, or others will control it for you." Hassan squeezed Anne's hand. "Still with me?" Anne glanced around the room filled with people she hadn't even known existed 24 hours ago. People who now seemed to hold pieces of her future. She thought of the circus outside, the cameras, the life about to change forever. "I'm still here," she said. "But Hassan..." "Yes? Next time you want to take me on a normal date, we're going to New Jersey." Anne woke at 5 a.m. in the guest room of Hassan's suite after a night of fractured sleep, filled with nightmares of being chased by talking cameras. Through the wall, she could hear Hassan speaking in low tones on the phone, probably with his family across the world, where it was already late at night. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m., 5 hours to transform from Anne Richardson, unknown Brooklyn seamstress, into Anne Richardson, the official girlfriend of a crown prince. No pressure at all. A soft knock made her jump. "Anne, it's me, Amira. May I come in?" Anne opened the door to find Princess Amira immaculate even at 5 in the morning, trailed by an aide carrying a tray of coffee. "I thought you might need caffeine and an honest conversation before the show begins," Amira said, motioning for the aide to leave the tray and slip out. They sat in the small sitting area, Anne wrapped in the hotel robe. "Nervous?" Amira asked. "Terrified," Anne admitted. "Last night I was researching others who went through this. Kate Middleton, Meghan Markle, others. And God, what they endured before things settled. Amira nodded. The difference is you have advantages they didn't at the start. Like what? You're American. You're on American soil, and you already have your own profession. You're not a student, not an actress looking for status. You had a full life before Hassan stepped into it. Amira sipped her coffee. That makes you less vulnerable to certain lines of attack. Certain lines? Anne asked. Amira studied her carefully. Anne, in the coming hours, days, weeks, they'll call you a gold digger. They'll speculate about your past relationships. They'll critique your clothes, your looks, your family, your work. They'll invent stories about how you met and question your motives. Anne's stomach twisted. And how do I deal with that? Remember who you are. Remember you haven't changed overnight. You're still the woman Hassan fell in love with. Amira leaned closer. And remember, it's temporary. The media always finds another story eventually. And if I can't handle it, if I'm not strong enough? Amira smiled. My dear, last night you stood in a room full of royal advisors and told them to stop trying to scare you. You're stronger than you think. By 8 a.m., a production team had transformed a hotel conference room into a press stage. From an adjacent room, Anne watched technicians testing microphones, cameras adjusting lenses. It looks like a courtroom, she murmured. In many ways it is, Hassan said, appearing beside her in a navy suit immaculate as ever. Comforting, Anne muttered. He took her hand. Anne, we can still cancel. We can find another way to… Hassan. She turned fully to face him. Stop. We decided to do this, so let's do it. But I need you to trust me to handle it, okay? Don't try to shield me from hard questions or cut me off if I say something you don't like. And if they ask something too personal, then I decide whether to answer. I'm an adult, remember? For the first time that morning, Hassan smiled. How could I forget? At 9:45, Malik appeared with a clipboard and the expression Anne was already learning to read as full crisis mode. Final instructions, he said briskly. We'll begin with a prepared statement. Hassan speaks first, then Anne. Then we'll open for questions. Keep responses concise. Nothing about intimate personal life, nothing about long-term plans beyond what we've agreed. And if they ask about my family? Anne asked. You say they support your happiness, full stop. Don't elaborate. And if they ask about marriage? It's too early for that kind of speculation, Malik recited. Hassan, if they ask about your father's reaction? My family is getting to know Anne and appreciates her intelligence and independence, Hassan replied smoothly. Perfect. Both of you, last chance to change your minds. Anne and Hassan exchanged a look. Let's do this, Anne said. The press room was packed. Anne counted at least 40 journalists, cameras from multiple networks, and faces she didn't recognize, but who clearly recognized her. The noise was overwhelming, overlapping voices, camera shutters, the hum of equipment. But when they walked in, silence dropped like a curtain. Hassan strode to the podium with the ease of a man who'd done this 100 times. Anne stood slightly behind him, just as Amira had coached. Good morning, Hassan said, his voice clear and steady. Thank you for coming. I chose to hold this conference to clarify the situation of the last 24 hours, and to officially introduce someone very important to me. He turned slightly toward Anne, who stepped forward. This is Anne Richardson, a talented seamstress and an extraordinary woman with whom I have the privilege of beginning a serious relationship. He paused, letting the words settle. I know there will be great interest and speculation. I understand that. But I want to make one thing clear from the start. Anne will be treated with the respect owed to anyone I choose to share my life with. Anne moved closer to the microphone. Thank you, she said, her voice steadier than she expected. I know this is unusual and I'm grateful for the chance to speak for myself. Hassan and I met a few weeks ago and yes, we are exploring a relationship. I'm an independent seamstress. I run my grandmother's atelier in Brooklyn. I have my own life and career. Any decision about our future will be made together, by both of us. Now we'll take questions, Malik announced. The first hand in the air belonged to a CNN reporter Anne recognized from Sunday mornings. Prince Hassan, can you tell us about the circumstances of how you met?